Good afternoon, Upper Sixth. Here we are. So, news article from the Times today. I've obviously not used it verbatim, but there's the original, a lot more depth than I've put in the case study for you. I was reading this about, obviously, we know the problems with Ted Baker. We've been looking at this in previous case studies. Clearly, their brand is of some value to someone. Next already use under licensed Ted Baker clothes, and clearly the Fraser Group are also eyeing them up as well to add to their extensive brand portfolio. We'll see who wins, if any of them. So I thought of this from an economies of scale perspective, because that's one of those terms that is often confused or under contextualized by students. Obviously, this is about potentially acquisitions. This video is not so much about acquisitions. It will touch upon it, but it talks about the benefits to organisational efficiencies. Now, I'm thinking about efficiencies linked into economies of scale, and actually we see that they're in a range of units across the themes. So I thought I'd go through the different types of efficiencies for you, and then we'll focus on organisational efficiencies in context with obviously the case study, and then there's a mark scheme at the end of it. There's no answer to walk through, but at this stage you can all mark and see how you get on. Okay, here we go. So this is the question. So assess the likely impact. So it's our normal start to a hook, something similar to that usually, of Next acquiring Ted Baker on Next's organisational efficiency. Okay, so it's the normal of acquiring. I'm going to need to demonstrate some sort of understanding of acquisitions. Pretend that's a K. I'm also going to need to be able to show some sort of understanding of operational efficiencies. So we understand that it's on organisational efficiencies. We know it's a 12 marker, so we're looking for a P, however, AJ, answer the question, justify, and one of the future orientated MOPs. Your MOPs might be in the justification, but if it's not contextualised, don't bother writing it, save your time. You're not going to get any marks for it, move on to the 20 marker. Here's the case study. At this stage, you should be reading through the case study and thinking possibly about operational efficiencies. So I've linked it into economies of scale for you to help you revise economies of scale as well. So from this perspective, operational could be those synergies between the supply chain. So instead of having two separate supply chains, two different suppliers for Ted Baker clothes, maybe Next could just pay one of their existing suppliers who they trust to make Ted Baker clothes for them. It could be that they use different logistics companies at the moment. Therefore, they could then give extra business to whoever Next currently use. Maybe they can drive down prices. But if you're using two instead of one, at least it's two pieces of admin. So by reducing one piece of admin, hopefully you're improving efficiencies. So we've got, yes, leading to costs and stuff like that, fixed costs coming down and stuff like that, but we're thinking about those processes to do with operational. There are also financial efficiencies, not so much in this one, but it could be inferred. And if we're thinking about the power, Porter's five forces, the power of the buyer of finance, if Next were to acquire Ted Baker, they suddenly become larger. Excuse me. And this gives them more buying power for finance. Maybe it drives down their interest rates. There are lots of other things out there as well. It could be that there are some very profitable parts of Next. We know about that. We've done over the case studies on it. We've looked at their accounts. And it might be that they've got retained profits that they can invest. Remember, the CEO said he wants to get Next to £1 billion worth of profits by the end of 2024. He has not said what he wants to do with that billion quid. Okay, is it invest in the future, or is it take some profits now, give it to shareholders? Is it pay off debts? There's lots of things they could be doing with this. So actually, we know that Next is a very profitable company. Depending on how much they're going to spend on Ted Baker, I'm thinking it's probably less than that. Depends where this money comes from. Okay, we'll see. We've got strategic efficiencies linked to economies of scale, thinking about that long-term growth. And that links, obviously, this to finance, to strategy over the long term. Is this brand going into their brand portfolio going to give them any more competitive edge over competitors like the Fraser Group, for example? Is removing Ted Baker as an opportunity for the Fraser Group to buy them going to help Next in the long run? Are they going to get more than 211 million back, for example, if that was the price, in the long run? More importantly, what damage could Fraser Groups do to Next by owning Ted Baker? Remember, Next currently sell Ted Baker clothes under license. Yeah, it doesn't mean that they won't be able to do that in the future, but do they really want one of their main competitors supplying them? Maybe not. Maybe they do. Maybe this is an opportunity for both companies. Who knows? We've then got those marketing efficiencies linked into economies of scale. And we're thinking about one marketing department instead of two. We're thinking of maybe I don't know, if we're thinking about Ansoff and that cross-promotional activity that we were talking about the other day in a different video, then maybe bringing Ted Baker into the fold. It used to be an innovative and very popular fashion brand. Maybe they could bring that in to bring more people into Next stores. Maybe some of the toxic reputation of the Ted Baker brand, with forced hugging being referred to, even though he's innocent until proven guilty and he's denied it, that reputation possibly could tarnish the brand with some consumers. Okay, maybe. Who knows? Anyway, so we've got lots of different things there linked to economies of scale. Hopefully this helps you to contextualize your use of economies of scale. Now, moving on, there's our links into 2.4 resource management for operational efficiency, and I've put in red for you the links into the curriculum, inventory management, logistics, supply chain and stuff like that. We've then got other links. Remember the questions about operational efficiencies, but we're sort of revising the others. You've got links into relative finance units, probably some theme 3 stuff coming in there as well, actually, if we think about some of those ratios we learn. And then we've got those strategic ones with the obvious link there is 3.1 and most of the units that are in there. I think we've already referred to Ansoff, for example, and Porters. So there's lots of stuff in there. And then marketing efficiencies. Well, Ted Baker are a global company. Yeah. Next, have aspirations to grow even more globally. So we could look on this as a global marketing question if we wanted to. Okay, so there's lots of information there. And remember, this could possibly be, or something similar to this could possibly be in paper 3, which means they could be assessing all 4 units with one question in some ways. Okay, well, the better students with their 20 markers might bring in other knowledge, won't they? At least we're going to contextualise economies of scale now. So here's the potential mark scheme. So I'm not going to read through all of this. I thought that this question really did need me to demonstrate an understanding of operational efficiency linked into an objective of Next. And I know the 1 billion profit target because we've talked about it before. And I feel that we should really talk about the acquisition somewhere in there as well. And you need to cover both of these. Some advantages there. I've used quotes for you. And, it's up to you. There are lots of different ways of doing this. But remember, when you're doing an advantage or a disadvantage, your counter argument, your however for that paragraph, must be to the point that you have just written and in context. My advice is to contextualize everything and then you won't forget. If you put in an abstract, however, it's not going to get you top marks, is it? So we've got some disadvantages there, and there are more in there. Remember, this is just a mark scheme that I've quickly knocked up for you. And if you've come up with a different answer, then that's fine. Just sense check it against the case study. And as long as you're covering the knowledge requirements and your counter arguments and stuff actually sound like they're in context and they make sense, then actually award yourself the marks. Some possible answers, I've just put one in favour, one against. So, you know, and you'll see here, worsen in the short term. If we're thinking about operational efficiencies, they're not going to happen instantly, are they? So I think this probably would be my preferred answer because it's easier to pitch. You know, in the short term, taking on another company with another HR department, another logistics, other branding team, a totally different culture, in the short term, this is going to actually lead to worse operational efficiencies. However, in the long term, our MOPS is sort of already written for us, isn't it? Okay, but the way I've written this one is the traditional it depends on factor, which is a perfectly healthy way of writing a justification in some ways, because it really does depend on how they deal with the integration of Ted Baker's operations. If they run it as a separate entity to start off with and gradually bring it in, well, they're not going to see those efficiencies until the medium term. However long the medium term is, I don't know. If they are going to do it short, sharp, shock, yeah, which is pretty much what the Fraser Group are doing with Matches Fashion, let's face it, they're going to make 500 and something people redundant and just integrate the brand. If Next were to do that with Ted Baker, then there's a bit of short-term pain, bad press, bad feeling with the staff, and then very quickly consumers will forget that Ted Baker was a separate company. You know, consumers are fickle beasts and don't tend to hold grudges for too long, unless you're the Ratner owners. Do your history. So we've got our basic MOPs here and future orientated in context. Nothing better than a nice quotation mark sometimes as well. Sometimes it helps you to write the MOPs. But if you are justifying from a future orientated perspective, you're probably going to pick up most of the marks anyway. Remember, this is 1.2 minutes per mark. Remember, you've got a maximum of 15 minutes to read the case study and plan. This case study is a little bit longer, so maybe give yourself 17 if you do it from scratch. I've not bothered putting level 0 to 3 up on the slide for you because remember, we're not aiming for perfection, we're aiming for level 4. Hopefully you enjoyed that. See you next week.